Welcome into the Fantasy Guides podcast. My name is Andrew Teuscher, and I am joined today by the owner, the operator of Fantasy Guides and FantasyGuides.com, Stephen Rippey, and master of the bets, runner of the Discord, Jacob Rhodes as well, back this week. And we are here to talk about buys and sells going into week 8, the players you've got to add, the players you've got to ditch so that you can make that second half push to the championship. Because, gentlemen, we're halfway through. Steven, how's your busy Tuesday treating you? You ready for the second half?
Oh, yeah. Tuesdays are rough, man, but we're halfway through. We're halfway through the day. Things are looking good. I can see light at the end of the tunnel.
Jacob, you ready to channel your full tilt into this episode and give us the passion?
So ready. I'm coming off a cold. That's why I wasn't on last week. I have lost pretty much everybody to injuries this year when we're only halfway through. And, I'm a Browns fan, so everything's great.
Jacob, somehow you gave me your cold from Columbus. I don't know how you did it.
Sorry about that.
Always got to disinfect, even over Zoom or recording podcasts.
I'm going to start wearing a mask when we podcast.
As you should. Well, here's some guys we want to bring closer. We'll start with our buys. We've each got a buy. We've each got to sell. And Jacob, I like yours. It makes sense. It's easy enough. Tell us about your friend, De'Von Achane.
Yeah, pretty easy buy, pretty straightforward. He has got the easiest schedule the next 5 weeks for running backs. So he's got Arizona, Buffalo, the Rams, the Raiders, and the Patriots. You can run against all of those teams. It looks like Tua might be coming back this week, which is just fantastic. That team needs him back in a major way. I hope he's healthy, hope he's good to go, hope he stays healthy. Achane needs him. That offense needs him. That whole team needs him because it's looking bad right now. They need to make a run. They could do that in these next 5 weeks with matchups. And I think Achane's going to be a big part of that. But we kind of forget already those first 2 weeks, he was better than Saquon Barkley. And we know how good Saquon Barkley's been in fantasy, but Achane was incredible. He had 7 receptions those first 2 weeks. Those were also the only 2 weeks he's had touchdowns. He's had 0 since. So it's been a brutal run without Tua, but hopefully we get Tua back. Hopefully we get one of those big Achane games. He hasn't had over 6 yards per carry in a game yet. He did that 5 times last year. So there is a monster game in the wake here for Achane, and I think it's coming in these next 5 weeks. He's also got a top 10 schedule rest of season, so it just bodes really well for a guy that the offense should be getting better. He gets a lot of receiving work, and he's got those blow-up performances waiting. So I am buying in.
Yeah, I'll agree with that. I've been saying he's a buy, and I think we've been saying it for a couple weeks now. At week 5, he got a concussion. He had 3 carries for 18 yards and then got a concussion. So, that's just bad luck on that one. I don't think his size has anything to do with him getting a concussion. And then this past week against Indy, he averaged over 5 yards a carry. He had 15 attempts, which I think is good. He had 18 opportunities. He had 77 rushing yards, 5 fantasy points, not great, but he still finishes the RB25. It's not horrific, but people are already like, this guy's, I see it. People are commenting like, this guy sucks. The guy does not suck. Like, this guy, people were arguing he's like a top 5 running back just after week 2. Yep. And then the Tua injury happens, and then here's where we're at. It sounds like Tua's coming back. Is it this week, guys?
Yeah, it looks like it's this week. Yep.
Yeah. So, I'm in on him. Over the next 5 weeks, like Jacob said, one of the easiest schedules. He's got the 5th easiest rest of season schedule. It does get harder after, I think, week 13, but especially for people that like need wins now might be the perfect time to add him.
Yeah, he's also a guy that if he's catching a lot of passes out of the backfield, I don't worry as much about strength of schedule, but the fact that it's still top 5, top 10 is good.
People started to worry about I didn't think the Miami Dolphins could actually be a buy low because everyone was going to know, when Tua's back, offense back to normal. And what happened was the Dolphins offense was so bad without Tua that now everyone just thinks the entire offense is going to be horrible, not score any points, and no one's usable in fantasy anymore. And I don't think it's going to be the same great offense we've had the last couple of seasons, but it's going to be good enough that De'Von Achane, who's getting a lion's share of everything in that backfield, is going to do great. He's averaging 54% of snaps, 44% of the rushing attempts, and a 14% target share. That is plenty good for him to continue what he was doing. De'Von Achane, we love you. You're not bad. I had people out here saying at some point, Breece Hall is a bad running back because he had a couple bad weeks. Kenneth Walker was a bad running back because he was bad last year. Get out of here. Miss me with that. All right. Another bye we got. Steven, why? Why are we buying Russell Wilson?
Andrew, I just noticed you didn't even have him as a waiver ad. What's going on here?
It's Russell Wilson.
All right. Well, listen. He just finished as a QB3 against a good Jets defense. Now, it wasn't like he was amazing in that game. Yeah, I'm starting to wonder if the Jets are frauds.
Yeah, they kind of lost their, main defensive guy. So all of a sudden, the past 2 weeks, they're terrible on defense. But go ahead.
They haven't looked as good. But I mean, I saw Sauce in that game. He was in it for the entire game. So anyway, he finished as a QB3 that week, scoring 24 fantasy points. Prior to that, the Jets were giving up the third fewest fantasy points to the quarterback position. And like I said, he didn't look great, but it was his first game on a new team returning from an injury. So there was that pass he threw in the flats that just was one of the worst passes I've seen. And even they had the memes of Mike Tomlin, like with the face, like what the hell was that? I think you're going to get some of that with Russ, but give the guy a break. He started to look much better as the game went on. And Pittsburgh has the 5th easiest schedule moving forward. He's going to keep chucking it to George Pickens, who I also think we've been saying is a buy. I still think is a buy. That guy catches everything that's thrown within his stratosphere. So I think Russ is going to keep chuck it to him. The opponents get a lot easier. So yeah, I like Russ moving forward. I'm buying in a little bit. I actually added him. I had Justin Fields in the league. I dropped Fields and added Russ, and I'm feeling pretty good about it.
Here's my fear. I've heard from one consumer of the Pittsburgh Steelers, AJ Cleaver, reminded us that I believe Justin Fields came over to the Steelers on a conditional pick that's conditioned on playing time. I wonder if Russ finds his way out of the lineup after a couple of weeks. He has another pulled hamstring. I think Justin Fields might have been looking too good. I'm pushing back on this one, Steven. I'm not sure if he's going to finish the year. I don't actually think his schedule looks all that great. He has Cleveland twice. Philadelphia has been weirdly good against quarterbacks. He's got Kansas City in the championship week. He's got a bye week ahead of him. I don't like that. I don't want to get on Russell Wilson. He looked terrible. I don't know, man. I think it's the Bronco in you. You just trying to hold on to him.
No, I hated Russ. I've never been a fan of Russell Wilson.
Let's ride.
Yeah, I thought he was kind of douchey when he came over. The whole "let's ride" thing was cringeworthy. He beat my Broncos. He destroyed them in the Super Bowl. So I have not been a fan of Russell Wilson. I don't know which schedule you're looking at, but everything I look at, having the Giants, then Washington, then Baltimore, like those are really good matchups coming up. Even Cleveland hasn't been that great against quarterbacks. So I don't know. Maybe we got different schedules we're looking at
versus points straight up. And both could be. One could be misleading in one way, and one could be misleading in the other. I won't buy Russell Wilson out of. He could be great. He could be the quarterback.
Well, you didn't even have him included in our waivers, so I
The New York. The reason he wasn't on waivers, the New York Giants are allowing the 6th fewest passing yards per game. It's because they have an okay defense and they don't score. No points get scored in those games, and they take forever. No pace of play. Just a bad matchup next week. He could have some good weeks coming up. I will have to admit. Russ likes to throw a moon ball, and those are efficient for fantasy.
All right, put it on the board.
Steve,
Russell Wilson.
Bo Nix or Russell Wilson?
Well, just based on the schedule. Well, actually, Bo Nix has the 2nd easiest schedule. I mean, I would probably say Russ at this point. I kind of like his weapons better. I mean, Bo Nix has been okay, but I'm not too optimistic about his passing weapons by comparison.
I'd go Bo. I like the rushing floor, but
yeah, that's true.
That's a gross territory. I'm getting us out of here. Pulling the eject button. When we're talking Russell Wilson, that's when it gets scary. I gotta buy much better looking. And I'm not to poop on Stevens buy too much, but that's Russell Wilson. My buy the good players. Buy DeVonta Smith. And the reason you can buy him right now, had a bye week, then comes off that bye week, and has a couple or one or two, I forget at this point, just not so great games. Specifically last week, he had -2 receiving yards. Yeah, he's had 2 games since, and he's not been lighting up the stat sheet. When you look on Sleeper, it's not green across the board like it was earlier in the year, and he had himself a terrible game last week, and I just think he's going to bounce back. That offense is too good to be horrible, despite absolute atrocities in their coaching staff. Somehow the Eagles will always score points. Don't watch the games. Just look at the box score after and be happy whenever you have fantasy points scored. People always underrate DeVonta Smith. It's kind of like Deontay Johnson territory. No matter what, the guy's a buy low because no one wants to evaluate him high enough. He just plays on a team that is ugly, doesn't look phenomenal, but always puts up yards. Weeks 1 through 3 before an injury and a bye week, he had 15, 20, 14.9 fantasy points on 8 targets, 10 targets, 10 targets. And it's been a little bit down to the target category these last couple of weeks. I think he's going to bounce back. He's got the second easiest schedule remaining the rest of the way. So talent versus lack of talent in a good situation. They'll hopefully have to stay in games and keep chucking it because not every week are you going to get to play the New York Giants and the Cleveland Browns, who desperately want to keep games to around 20 points because they can't score more than that. They're going to have to eventually play teams that actually want to score points, buy good players on good teams, and usually there's at least a floor there. Get you a DeVonta Smith for the stretch run, and you'll have yourself a grand time.
Yeah, I'll get behind that. If we're just going off a feel, doesn't it just feel like I've completely forgotten about DeVonta Smith?
Mm-hmm.
I think it's because of the bye week. But he actually had a decent week last week against Cleveland. I think it's one of those guys that people don't overly get excited about. The fact that like you said, he had the negative point game. I mean, it's almost a riddle. Like,
he's also too skinny. I also you look at him and that's not an NFL player. That's a male model. But he's too skinny.
Yeah, exactly. But to your point, he's got Cincinnati, who is very beatable in the secondary, and then Jacksonville week 9. Like, it doesn't get any better than that over the next 2 weeks. They'll probably be in a shootout with Dallas. They'll probably be in a shootout with Washington. Then they got the Rams, who I'm not worried about the Rams. And they got Baltimore, which they've been atrocious. Yeah, it's as good as it gets going forward. So I'm all in on that as well.
He still had over a 90% route participation last week, so he's still on the field, still running routes. He's not like he was benched last week, and that's why he had a terrible outing. It's because Hurts threw 14 passes. I don't think that's going to be the norm. AJ Brown has been incredible, but I think he opens things up for DeVonta Smith more than he hurts him. So he had 2 good weeks with AJ Brown on the field. I think it gets better moving forward in more competitive matchups, which it looks like they're going to have.
It was a Saquon Barkley revenge game. No, they're not going to throw the ball. You're going to let Saquon go into New York and run the ball over the people who are burning jerseys in the front of that stadium, which Saquon did say he saw. Giants fans, just be happy for the memories you had. Don't be a hater of young Saquon. All right. Those are the guys we like. Those are the ones we're wanting to bring in. And now here comes the sells. We've each got one. The ones we're pushing away. And Jacob with this one, again, Browns fan. Things aren't going well. He hates dreams. He hates up-and-comers. Please, trash on this man. Why are we selling this guy, Jacob? Who is it?
I am selling Tank Bigsby, and it is nothing against the guy. I think he's actually become the number 1 running back in a Jags offense that is just gross, but...
Keep them overseas. Don't bring them back. Leave them in London.
Keep him overseas. He is the running back 21 on the year, which is it's kind of crazy. He just had a dominant performance against the Patriots, almost 24 fantasy points, over 100 rush yards, another 2 touchdown game for him. He was great on the ground, and they had a positive game script that entire game. You know what they're not going to have going forward is any sort of a positive game script against Green Bay, Philadelphia, Minnesota, Detroit, bye week, Houston. Those are the next matchups on the slate. That is all right in a row. That does not bode well for someone that has got 2 targets on the entire season. He has 1 catch all year. He's not a part of the receiving game. That was even with Travis Etienne out last week. All these game scripts are going to be terrible. He's got the 3rd worst rest of the season schedule. It doesn't look good. Fantasy playoffs don't look good. I don't know when you are going to be able to put him in your lineup again and say, hey, this is a good start for my fantasy team.
We talked about buying good players on good teams. Well, it's a good player, but the team isn't good, and that's the issue. It's like you need 3 things in fantasy. You want good player on a good team with a good situation, good schedule, good matchups. Well, he's good, but the schedule's bad and the team's bad, so it's not like you can bank on them actually being in high-scoring games all the time. I wanted him to be something. He is going to be something. He is going to actually pop up for a couple big games because he's really talented. I forget the stat, but he's like blowing out everyone else in rushing yards over expected because he's breaking every single tackle imaginable. Steven, are you willing to sell Tank? Or are you still holding on? And answer me this. How much are you trying to get rid of Tank? Is this a panic get off your team? Is this just a sell high moment? What are you taking this as?
I'd say somewhere in between there. I am trying to get him off my roster. What's funny is before we were looking at these, in one of my home leagues, I had sent out an offer for, I think I offered like Russell Wilson and a depth player for Tank.
You're willing to give up Russell Wilson?
I've got Lamar Jackson.
Fair enough.
So anyway, I tried to get Tank, and then I started looking at the schedule, and I was like, oh, maybe I don't want Tank, because to Jacob's point, it'd be one thing if it was like the 10th worst running back schedule moving forward. I might be like, it's not that big a deal. But to Jacob's point, it's like the 3rd worst. It's really bad. His opponent is averaging just 10 points per game allowed to the running back. Or sorry, their rank is they're the 10th most difficult matchup moving forward. So I was looking at it wrong. So he's basically got a bottom 10 matchup week after week. It was the most sell high moment. So it's kind of, like I said, it's kind of both. It's sell high moment. He just had an amazing game. Everybody that was up early enough saw it. And when ETN comes back, it's going to be a split backfield. Like if you started tanking these games, that's awesome. You got those points. You probably got some wins because of it. But yeah, I'm somewhere between panic selling and selling high, because I think it's going to be rough for him moving forward.
Tank Bigsby has like 2 total targets on the season. So when they're not in positive game scripts, it's going to be terrible. You guys tell me which one of these coming up games that Jacksonville is going to lead in. All right. Green Bay next week, Philadelphia, Minnesota, Detroit. Maybe they'll beat the bye week. We'll see what happens there.
Yeah,
Houston Texans, even the Tennessee Titans. That's the first one where maybe you win, but that's week 14. You're out of the playoffs if you're starting Tank Bigsby every week.
Well, and that's the
They've
problem.
been good against running backs.
I was going to say Tennessee's the one you look at on paper like, okay, well maybe in that game, but they've been really good against running backs. So yeah, I think Jacob's got a good one there.
Still a dynasty buy. Still a dynasty buy. If you're out there playing dynasty, pick him up now, stash him. Travis Etienne's contract's up at the end of this year if they don't pick up his 5th year option, which no one ever does with a running back.
I'm going to I got to drop this trade offer I sent out. Hopefully I'm not too late.
While Steven does that, I'll start prepping his sell that he's got for us. And Steven, for some reason, I guess this week's theme is old is good. Get rid of the new, because he's got another quarterback, but he's selling this one. You also hate hopes and dreams and fun things. Why do you hate Drake Maye?
I don't hate Drake Maye. I think the Patriots, I would have rather they got Jaden Daniels. I think we all did, but I think they got a good one in Drake Maye. But he just had 2 of the easiest opponents on the schedule. And he put in, I know last week was top 5 finish. I don't know if the last 2 weeks, but they were both top 10 finishes.
He had 20 plus in both.
Yeah. So this is a sell high. This isn't like Tank where I'm super panicked. But I think if you can sell high right now, you got him off of waivers. If you can there's teams. Every league has a team that needs quarterback help. I don't care if you're in a 1 quarterback league. There's always one team. And if they're not looking at the schedule and they're thinking, oh, that's an upgrade at quarterback, I think they're going to be mistaken. The Jaguars suck. The Jaguars are terrible. And it took a lot of garbage times. Well, he started out good, and then there was that big lull, and then he got a little bit of garbage time at the end to get to those 20 fantasy points. Moving forward, after the Jags, he's got the Jets, Titans, Chicago. He's got Miami. He's got a lot of tough opponents coming up. And my biggest thing is I think he still has the worst weapons in the NFL. When your number 1 passing option is Hunter Henry, that's a big time issue. They don't even use Ramondre Stevenson on passing downs.
He's in timeout.
Yeah, if they left him in on passing downs, that'd at least be like, all right, well, they got Ramondre. No, he comes out and they put in Gibson or
Jermichael Hasty. Baby.
These are the guys they're throwing to. Jalen Polk can't catch anything. I know this because every week I'm stupid and I fall for the Jalen Polk 16 receiving yards line prop because I'm thinking, oh, he just has to catch one, and he never catches it. So,
nope.
Yeah, maybe it'll be a little bit better if Pop Douglas isn't sick next week, which that's a whole other thing I'd like to vent about. But I just think weapons are bad. Schedule gets really tough. I don't think he's going to be very startable moving forward.
if you can stash him, if you can hold on to him until the fantasy playoffs, that's when things start to clear up a little bit. That's when you have some hope. And he's got some rushing floor to him. He is a very good runner. He's an insane athlete, and he plays a fantasy friendly game. But to your point, unless they get blown out by 40 every game and they just get garbage time, it's going to be hard to see how the Patriots score points. And it's not Drake Maye's fault. He's not terrible. I think he's really good. It's just that offense is so bad, and the defense sucks.
They are going to get blown out.
Yeah,
it's
but they have to get blown out by enough. They have to be blown out by 40 so the defense stops playing.
Yeah, and I guess that's possible too. Like, I do think he could get garbage time. I don't like banking on garbage time though.
No,
like a lot of times you think, oh, garbage time, and then you see Drake Maye get pulled in the end of the third quarter, and then what you thought was going to be all this garbage time, it's like, nah, we need to protect our investment. So.
He has more 20-point fantasy games than Dak Prescott, C.J. Stroud, Patrick Mahomes, Anthony Richardson, and he's played 2 games.
Mm-hmm.
So it's such an easy.
He is
sell.
actually a good quarterback. The offense does suck, but I don't think the schedule is that scary. I think he's going to throw a lot, and he can actually do some stuff on the ground. I wouldn't panic sell. I think it depends on what you can kind of get for him, but I actually think he's a really good quarterback moving forward, and hopefully Jalen Polt turns into something.
Here's what you do. There's somebody out there who Jaden Daniels was on waivers, or they missed Jaden Daniels by a hair in the draft, and they thought, man, I wanted the good rookie who runs a lot. And then you go to that person with a Drake Maye, and you convince them it's the same guy getting ready to score 20 points a game every week. It's basically Jaden Daniels. You just get this one midway through the season. That's the sell. It's a young rookie who people always have to tell themselves a story. Why wasn't he playing well earlier in the season? Well, he wasn't playing. It's an easy sell. If the schedule was better, I'd have Drake Maye as a massive buy, but we just can't get with it. All right, I got one more sell for you. And I also hate hopes and dreams. And I also hate good things. I want to see everything suffer. I really do think Jaden Daniels is good. I have been getting on the Jaden Daniels train. I have to admit, I was wrong. Jaden Daniels is good at football. However, his receiver, Terry McLaurin, I think has to be a sell going forward. And it's for a few reasons. One is Jaden Daniels might miss a couple weeks, and I don't want Marcus Mariota throwing him the football. That only leads to bad things. They played the Carolina Panthers, and they had a good week, and it's the Carolina Panthers. It's literally the worst football team in the last 5 years. They somehow got worse. They're worse this year than they were last year. We all told ourselves, the Panthers, they can't get worse, can they? And they did. They got worse. So that doesn't count. So if Mariota's playing the next week or two because they protect their young running back or young quarterback, that's a problem. I think Daniels will play at least soon-ish. But he's also got the third hardest remaining schedule after playing the easiest schedule to this point. They have played absolutely nobody in terms of people who can actually stop the passing game. These are the teams they've gotten to beat up on recently. Carolina, Baltimore, who can't stop a pass, Cleveland, Arizona, Cincinnati, and Tampa Bay. Those are some of the best matchups we always look at every single week. And it just so happens that those have been the teams they play. And no one expected Baltimore and Cleveland, and they did expect Carolina to be bad, but they didn't expect all these teams to be bad. So the schedule was like, oh, you're doing this against good defenses. He's not. So I'm afraid Terry McLaurin's going to have to regress a little bit. He's got a high ADOT. That's high variance. He's not going to be this consistent, at least. He's the wide receiver 12 overall. He's not going to be a wide receiver 1 rest of season. He's got the 17th most targets. What happens if efficiency goes down? You don't have volume to back it. 17th most is not bad, but that's not wide receiver 1 territory. You can't bank on that. He's a wide receiver 2 back end rest of season, but you can easily sell him as a wide receiver 1.
I might actually disagree that you can easily sell him as a wide receiver 1.
I feel like people are all over this offense. I can't hear enough about them.
Well, they're the highest scoring offense in football. So I think that people are high on them for a decent reason. You're looking at adjust the schedule. I don't see the schedule as being that bad. It's not good moving forward, but I don't see it as being horrific.
I have it as the 3rd worst schedule adjusted.
Well, it's middle of the pack just on what's been allowed. And the thing is, if you can get top 12, sure. Like it would very much depend on the wide receiver. Maybe you package him and Russell Wilson and you get, something really good, or him and Drake Maye and you get something really good.
Don't package Russell Wilson. That'll hurt your value.
Then I'm for it. but I'm not panic selling on him. Like,
No, I'm not either.
I still think he's a wide receiver 2-ish, somewhere in there. Like, who would you rather have rest of the season, him or Devontae Adams?
Ooh, that's actually really close.
Terry.
Probably Terry.
I think it's close. I
But
guess
I think
my point.
to your point, I know you can sell Terry and get Devontae plus.
God, not from what I've heard from Devontae. Like, I have so many people saying he's a locked-in wide receiver 1 moving
I don't
forward.
think they watched last week.
I think he'll have wide receiver 1 games, but I don't think he's a locked-in wide receiver 1. So, yeah, I don't know. I don't think it's a bad one because the schedule does get more difficult, but I also still buy into this offense. He's still produced with Mariota. It's not something I would bank on long-term, but Mariota's also, this Kingsbury offense is playing better than we've seen, a lot of offenses operate. So this is literally a sell high. It's not a must sell.
Yeah, I'm kind of against it, but if you can get wide receiver 1 value, sure. But he checks a lot of the boxes, Andrew, you talked about earlier. He's a good wide receiver. He's got no target competition. It's a great offense, the best offense. It's a good quarterback. The schedule might not be great moving forward, but I think he checks a lot more boxes than he doesn't. So I would get him for max value, sure, but he's not a must sell for me. But and you mentioned the Mariota thing. It's a short-term injury for Daniels, if anything. It's
week
just
to week.
Week to week. So it should just be 1 week, maybe it's 2. So I think that actually hurts his value a little bit in trades. So just make sure you're getting peak value if you're going to sell someone like Terry, because I think he's actually a solid asset moving forward.
If someone goes and checks the box score, they're going to see a lot of green lighting up on that sleeper app. So I'm just saying, everything's been running perfect for them. Things will not continue to be perfect for the rookie quarterback in the second half.
What do you think? Let's do a couple of names. Like, would you rather have him or Jaden Reed?
Probably Jaden Reed. It's a better offense.
What about
I would rather have Terry. Jaden Reed actually has a worse schedule, I think, moving forward, or it's right there with him.
What about Brian Thomas?
I'd rather have Brian Thomas.
I'd rather have Brian Thomas. That's funny, though, because those guys are literally bottom 3 in schedule rest of the season.
Him or DK Metcalf, knowing Metcalf's going to miss a couple weeks.
DK Metcalf.
DK. Yeah, that's a good buy low target, actually. If you're a team that hasn't been suffering with the injury bug and you've got a winning record, that's the kind of guy you can go after.
All right, let me give you a couple more names. Zay
or
Flowers.
Cooper Kupp.
Ooh, Zay Flowers, because it's very similar, but I trust Lamar in the second half more than I trust Jaden with his easy schedule so far.
All right, one more. Deontay Johnson.
Oh, no, I'll take Terry. Don't do the Deontay Johnson thing to me. The Panthers' offense, I'm getting far away. That's too much of a nosedive.
All right, so all I'm saying is I mentioned Jaden Reed and Brian Thomas, who are the wide receivers 7 and 8. I think Reed, you both kind of split on, hesitating on a little bit. Both like Brian Thomas more. And then Deontay and Zay Flowers, they're, wide receiver 19 and 20. And it's like, I'd rather have Terry. So I think he's somewhere in between there. So he's wide receiver 12 right now. I think he's somewhere in between wide receiver. I don't think he'll finish as a wide receiver 1, but I don't know that he's going to be outside the top 20.
Look at it as a stock market. This is the absolute peak. It can't get better than what it's been for the Commanders so far. This year has gone smoothly for them, and I'm glad. I'm not a hater. I love it. Good for football. But that is all of our buys. That is all of our sells. Thank you guys for tuning into the Fantasy Guides podcast. Make sure you hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. Please rate, review on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you're listening. Sharing, liking, rating, reviewing, subscribing. It's the best thing you can do for us. Go get you a weekly season guide on fantasyguides.com. Get all of these stats that you love. And don't think, oh man, it's week 8. I don't need it at this point. It won't be worth my money. Dude, you get it for less than the price of a large pizza. Skip the large pizza one night, eat at home,
Just
get a draft guide.
You know how many carbs? I mean, Andrew, I doubt you're carb counting these days.
Oh, no.
Wait till you get older, to get to my age. There's a lot of carbs in pizza, and they are not good for you, Andrew.
I just ate chicken nuggets and fries that were just frozen, so I'm absolutely not there.
Were they
yet.
Dino Nuggets?
Oh, I wish they were, but it's still worth getting the Fantasy Guides guide there no matter what. Follow the page on Instagram, X, TikTok, everywhere at Fantasy Guides. You can find our socials there as well. I'm Andrew Toysher. That's Jacob Rhodes. That's Stephen Rippey. Say goodbye to the friends at home.
I just pulled that Tank Bigsby offer.
Good for you, Stephen.